Hi everybody, welcome to Breeders' Cup Focus. I'm Dan Illman along with Matt Bernier. In this edition, we're going to take a look at the Breeders' Cup Distaff. Let's put up the main contenders with odds, preliminary morning line odds made by Daily Racing Form national handicapper Mike Watchmaker for all the latest news, notes, comments, odds, etc. for all of the Breeders' Cup divisions in the weeks and days leading up to the Breeders' Cup. Head on over to drf.com/BC. The sensational Monomoy Girl is the 5-2 favorite on the Watchmaker line. Abel Tasman coming off a perplexing performance in last week's Zenyatta Stakes, still the second choice based on her overall body of work at 4-1. Midnight Bizou placed first over Monomoy Girl in a controversial disqualification, and the Grade 1 Cotillion is at 5-1. And then you've got the late-running, long-striding Eskimo Kisses at 8. Several solid horses at double-digit odds. Let's start with Monomoy Girl and Midnight Bizou. They battled it out in the Grade 1 Cotillion last time out, and we're not even going to get into whether this disqualification was justified. I thought Midnight Bizou, once she got to the outside here, and I know she was being forced out by Monomoy Girl, had every chance to go by and just didn't. I'm not going to knock either one. I thought they both ran well, and they're probably the two best 3-year-old fillies in the country right now.
I agree with that. I suppose the thing that you need to consider exiting that race is the fact that the Cotillion's at 1 1/16, and they're going to have to deal with an extra 1/16 of a mile. I'm not convinced that that is Midnight Bizou's friend, and while Monomoy Girl has proven herself at 1 1/8, I think it's hard to ignore the fact that how could you be super positive about her drifting about down the lane right there? There's a little bit of a concern, a little bit of an alarm, whether they make an equipment change or not on her. We'll wait and find out. I think the good Midnight Bizou can obviously be close to this entire thing, but again, I don't know that she loves the distance. And the good Monomoy Girl, we know her biggest win to date came at Churchill Downs. So I think they're both legitimate contenders. I guess, again, really it just boils down to price.
I'd rather have Monomoy Girl at 1 1/8. I thought that at 1 1/16 in the Cotillion, that was Midnight Bizou's best chance to upend Monomoy Girl. She had not been able to do that in other races at other distances, and in the 1 1/16 she still couldn't get up, even though she was impeded. As for Monomoy Girl, I'm a little bit more bullish about her chances at 1 1/8. You mentioned she did it once, so I'm going to have to watch the head on another 10, 12, 15, 100 times before the Breeders' Cup Distaff and wonder, was Monomoy Girl really drifting about, or was Florence Giroux really race riding just a little bit too much and Monomoy Girl was responding to flow? She's the leader of the division, and she kind of cemented that based on Abel Tasman's non-effort last week as the 1-10 favorite in the Grade 1 Zenyatta Stakes. Let's turn into the stretch. This is tough to watch, folks, because you see her in the Orange Silks in 5th. She's on her wrong lead. She didn't break very well. She's been one-paced like this throughout, and it's still great to be Bob Baffert because the newly blinkered Vale Dory gets it done.
You know, it's been well documented that Baffert's got a little bit of an illness going through his barn right now, and to be honest with you, I almost feel like you have to hope that's what's going on with Abel Tasman, because at least then you would have an excuse where, okay, maybe she's not feeling well and, all right, she just didn't fire. But even having said that, if that is the case, it's difficult to take her off of that performance headed into the Distaff. If that isn't the case, then what the heck happened? Because she just at no point showed any kind of interest. She was sluggish out of the gate. She never really got involved. She made a mild move down the backside to get into relative striking range, but she never punched it in at any point. It's really one of those things. Her best race, I still think, is better than anyone else's best. The problem is, who knows if you're going to get that the first Saturday in November.
And I think it's a legitimate excuse if it does come out that she is sick. And I think Bob Baffert is reporting that she came out of that race with a little bit of a problem. Nothing that's going to affect her status in the Breeders' Cup Distaff, but certainly something that affected her performance in the Zenyatta. That being said, if she goes off at the Watchmaker 4-1 second choice in the Breeders' Cup Distaff, off of that effort, to me, she is a little bit of an underlay, and I just wouldn't want her off such a lousy race. As for Vale Dory, yes, it was nice to see her get back to the winner's circle with the addition of blinkers, but that Beyer speed figure of a 93 really pales in comparison to the Monomoy Girl and Midnight Bizou and some of the others in here, and just think, that was her best Beyer speed figure all year long.
I think at least if you're trying to spin a positive out of that, it's nice to see that the blinker's going on. All of a sudden, boom, she shows up with a more representative effort, because this year she had just been a complete disaster out there. Now at least you know that she can run a little bit. The problem I have is I'm not totally convinced 1 1/8 is really her friend. You and I for what seems like years have been saying, let's turn her back and get her ready for 7/8. I don't envision that happening because I think Baffert has the top two choices for that division. But look, Valladori, at least she's in good form going into a race like the Distaff.
La Force goes out for Patty Gallagher, who's really done a nice job with this filly, and it's kind of a shame that she hasn't gotten a big one. It always seems like she's in against the toughies, whether it's Fault or Unique Bella, and I guess if there was a time, it was last week. The favorite doesn't show up. Valladori still may not be back to her best form, and La Force still couldn't punch it in. She's now run second 7 times in 22 lifetime starts, and if she runs in the Distaff, she's got to stretch out, and I kind of like her punch at shorter distances. Maybe I'm crazy because she's going to be a good price.
I could be wrong. Has she only won twice in her career?
That's correct.
I kind of look at it and go, at this point, if she somehow sprung an upset in the Distaff, it's not totally out of the realm of possibility because she is in good form and she has respectable speed figures. To me, if you're using her, you should be using her underneath.
Now let's talk about a filly that I know you like a lot, and that is Eskimo Kisses for trainer Kenny McPeak. We're going to go back to the Alabama at Saratoga for 3-year-old fillies going 1.25 miles. There was a very fast pace on in this race. It helped Eskimo Kisses, a late runner. She got the better of a good field. She's a Julie, came back to win a stakes race at Remington last week, and you've got Midnight Bizou on the far outside finishing third. Eskimo Kisses got a nice trip, a nice pace scenario, and a nice ride, but we always had the feeling there was something here, especially if she gets some pace.
And well, a combination of the pace, like you said, as well as distance. Keep in mind the Alabama 10 furlongs. And I guess that would be my only sort of hang-up potentially about a race like the Distaff. And we'll see what happens coming up this weekend at Keeneland. I believe she's supposed to run in the Spinster. I believe Talk Vuv to me is also supposed to be in there. At 1.125 miles, are you going to get an electric pace situation for her to come at? And if you don't, all of a sudden are we talking about a horse that she's going to be compromised and maybe a minor award is her ceiling? That's always sort of the difficult thing, especially on the main track with a horse that is a true confirmed one-run closer.
We'll see if Eskimo Kisses takes that step forward or at least runs very well in the Spinster on Sunday. I wonder if Blue Prize is also going to run in that race as her final prep for the Breeders' Cup Distaff. She really loves Churchill Downs, and 1.125 miles is right in her wheelhouse. Just consider she won the Fleur de Lis in the Falls City, both at Churchill, both at 1.125 miles. Last time out in the Locust Grove, she gutted it out over a very sharp horse in Champagne Problems, going a shorter than ideal distance at 1.16 miles. There's really nothing sexy about Blue Prize other than she seems to fire every time for Nacho Correas.
She's very consistent. I think that's a positive thing, and that's not meant to be a knock by any stretch of the imagination. But to be frank, I've never ever looked at her and said grade 1 caliber, let alone Breeders' Cup Distaff. I think if you like her, you're banking on the consistency, you're banking on the Churchill Downs factor, and you're banking on the fact that you're probably going to be getting double digits. To me, she's more of an underneath type, but you know what? We'll find out if she runs really well this weekend. Should she go in that race at Keeneland? Maybe I could be talked into using her.
Keep an eye on the Spinster this Sunday as a final important prep for the Breeders' Cup Distaff, and you'll get updated odds next week in the Friday print edition of Daily Racing Form and early next week on drf.com/BC for all of the divisions. This weekend, tons of Breeders' Cup Challenge Series winning. You're in races, but as of right now, Monomoy Girl, the boss in the Distaff division, the 5-2 preliminary morning line favorite on the Watchmaker line.